Welcome to the first day of the Aster Sewalong. I'll be sewing up two different versions of the Aster during the sew-along. So I'm going to be using a plaid linen for view A, or the crop top, which you'll be seeing most during the sew-along, and I'm going to be adding a full lining to that in this light pink colored cotton lawn. I'm also going to be sewing up view B, or the dress version, in this kind of dark green linen. Now the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to transfer all of our notches and markings from our pattern pieces over to our fabric. So here I'm going to be first marking my darts, and I like to do this first by putting a pin through the point of my dart, and then I do just little notches at the end of those dart legs. And you can use different things to go ahead and transfer those markings over to your fabric. I like to use a washable Crayola marker. I usually try to find something that has some similarity in color to the fabric. And then I just use that to mark from the dart point down along those legs to those little clip markings that I made at the side seam. For the notches on my pattern pieces, I usually just do a little clip with my scissors. Keep in mind that the seam allowance on this pattern is only 1/2 inch, so make sure your snips are shorter than that. Now, if you are choosing to add a full lining like I am to view A of this pattern, then make sure that you have also marked the darts on your lining front piece. Now, if you are sewing up view B, or the dress view of the Aster pattern, you're going to have a few more markings to go ahead and transfer. So all of your pocket pieces will have not only these little notches that you need to snip, but also the dot markings that you are going to need to mark. I'm marking these once again with a Crayola washable marker, but you can, transfer this in another way if you want. Not only are you going to have these notches and dots on your pocket pieces, but you're also going to have them on the hip area of your front and back dress pieces. Now, one more marking to be aware of if you're sewing the dress view, there is a contour or fisheye dart on the very back piece of your dress, so you're going to want to mark these as well. So I do this in the same way that I did for the chest dart, where essentially I put pins in all of the corners, and there's 4 of them here, and I use that to then transfer the points of my dart, and then I use a washable marker to connect all of those lines. So do that on both of your back pieces, and then if you're lining your dress, you're also going to want to transfer those dart markings to your lining pieces. Now that we have transferred all of our markings, it's time to add fusible. So the first ones that I'm going to do here are the corner pieces. These are applied to all 4 corners on both the front and the back facing pieces. Now, one thing that I just want to note here is that if you have fabric that is a little bit of a looser weave or a lightweight fabric, you have the option of just completely fusing the entire front and back facing pieces, and this will just add a little bit more structure. But if you have kind of more of a medium weight, like the linen that I'm using here, I find that just fusing the corners does the trick to make sure that you have really good corners after you sew. So go ahead and add the fusible with, the fusible side down, touching the wrong side of your front and your back facing. Next, you're going to fuse the button band interfacing. So you're going to go ahead and place that interfacing so that it is 1/4 inch in from that center back edge, and 1/2 inch down from the upper edge, and 1/2 inch up from the bottom angled edge. So obviously the fusible side of your interfacing is going to be touching the wrong side of your back. Now, I'm obviously doing this on the crop top view, but this will be the same for the dress view as well. Now lastly, one other interfacing to go ahead and add is if you are sewing up the dress view of the Aster, you are going to apply fusible interfacing to the edge of the wrong side of each of the 4 pocket pieces. If your fabric is like mine and it doesn't really have a strong front or back side of the fabric, then make sure that you're doing these as 2 pocket pairs. Now that we've got all of that prep work done, it's time to sew some darts. So we're going to sew the darts on the front first, and let's do this by folding the dart markings with right sides together. And you're going to go ahead and align the dart legs as they're marked on your pattern pieces. Because this dart is sewn at an angle, it's a French dart, I find that it has more tendency to grow, so be extra careful to pin it really accurately. I like to pin through those actual dart legs and just make sure that they match up on the front and the back, just to make sure that everything's lined up before I sew. We're going to stitch that dart from the side seam down towards the point. Once you get to about a ½ inch of your dart point, you're going to reduce your stitch length down to 1 millimeter. You're not going to backstitch at the end, but instead you're just going to sew all the way off of the point of the dart. You're going to leave long thread tails, and then you'll use those thread tails to knot the end of your dart. Once sewn, you're going to go ahead and press those darts down towards the lower edge of your front piece. I like to do this on a tailor's hand because it just has like a more curved surface, and it helps me avoid any puckering when I am pressing it. Now, if you are fully lining your Aster like me, you're going to also sew the same darts on your front lining piece, just like you did on your main front pieces. And of course, press those darts down towards the bottom of your lining, just like you did for your front. If you're sewing the top view of the Aster, you're done for today. If you are sewing the dress view, you have one more thing to sew, and that is the contour or fisheye dart that's on the back pieces of your dress. Just like you did for your chest dart, you're going to be extra careful when you're pinning and matching up the dart legs on your fisheye or contour dart. And then you're going to stitch this dart. So you're going to do this by beginning around the center of the dart. You're going to backstitch and you're going to continue to stitch toward one of the points. Just like you did on the chest dart, you'll reduce the stitch length to 1 millimeter within a ½ inch at the end. Don't backstitch, but leave long thread tails, tie the thread tails in a secure knot and trim, and then you're going to start back at the center of the dart, stitching into the opposite direction or towards the opposite point, finishing this end of the dart in the same way as you did the first. And the last thing that we need to do is we're going to press that dart towards the center back. Now, if you have any pulling on the dart, you can take a little snip out of the center bulk of the dart, and that'll relieve any tension. But I find that it is such a small amount in this dart that that's not necessary. So like I said, go ahead and press that excess towards center back. Once you've pressed the darts on both of your back pieces, you're done for today. So come back tomorrow and we will continue sewing the aster by tackling the neckline.